What's up everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm at the tail end of a cold, so please excuse my raspy voice through the video. But in this recipe I'm going to walk you through an enchilada recipe that utilizes tender braised oxtails that have a little kick from some bourbon and guajillo peppers that is just out of this world delicious. So let's dive into the recipe. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is braise your oxtails, since this is going to take a few hours at minimum. So to get this done, you're going to season both sides of the oxtails with a generous amount of salt and black pepper. Once that's done, you're going to add them to a very hot pan, ideally a rondeau like I have here, and begin to roast them off until they have a really good golden brown color. While that's going in the pan, it's a good time to cut up your mirepoix or carrots, celery, and onions to braise the oxtails with. Give them a rough chop. It does not have to be anything uniform for the most part, and you can also crush up some garlic cloves and de-seed the guajillo peppers while you're at it. Once that's all ready to go, you're going to remove the beautifully golden brown oxtails from the pan, add in the veggies you just cut up along with some fresh thyme and rosemary and a little bay leaf. Then you're going to roast everything off until there's some charring around the edges of the vegetables. Next, you're going to add in the de-seeded guajillo peppers, and then you're going to deglaze the pan with some wonderful Kentucky bourbon, or really any bourbon you have on hand, but please be careful of the flare-up. I've done this more times than I can remember, so it doesn't really spook me, and I know to keep a little distance when I'm doing it, but turning the flame off while you pour is something I highly recommend if this step is a little scary for you. But nonetheless, once the bourbon is in, cook off the alcohol for about 15 seconds or so, then add the oxtails back in the pan, cover with chicken stock or even some water will do, cover it with a lid, and then you're going to cook on low to medium heat for at least 4 hours. Alright, so next up is the homemade corn tortillas. So in a stand electric mixer, or if you are feeling strong, you can do this by hand, but nonetheless you are going to add the Maseca into the bowl, which is basically corn flour, along with the salted water, and mix for a few minutes until the masa has a very slight tacky texture and can be easily molded without crumbling or sticking to your hands. This may require you to add a little more corn flour or water depending on the consistency as you go. When the masa is finished up, you're going to cover it with a damp towel so it doesn't dry out. Cut the edges of a sandwich bag until you have 2 squares of plastic. Then you're going to ball up about 10 to 15 gram little dough balls. maybe the size of a large gumball or so. After that, you're going to begin to press out the tortillas. Just be sure to stack them in between parchment so they don't dry out while you finish up the rest. Once the oxtails are close to being done, get a large cast iron plate, or in my case, this handy dandy cast iron cooktop. Get it on high heat and begin to cook the tortillas until they just start to bubble up on one side. Then you're going to give them a flip and into a bowl that's lined with a paper towel. Then you're going to set them aside until you are ready to roll up the enchiladas. So this should be about the time that the oxtails are finishing up, so give them a check to see if the meat is falling off the bone, and if it is, remove them from the braising liquid and start shredding the meat. But just be mindful of small bones and tough cartilage bits that tend to kind of linger around, and you just need to remove those during this process. After the meat is all shredded up, take some of the aromatics out of the braising liquid, such as the bay leaves, thyme, and rosemary stems, and then you're going to transfer everything to a blender and blend on high speed until you have this wonderful, rich-looking enchilada sauce that has a slight red hue from the guajillo peppers. And then you're going to pour the sauce back into the pan and start dipping the tortillas in the sauce to soften them up a little bit for rolling. Once all the tortillas are coated in that beautiful sauce, you're going to add some of the warm shredded oxtail meat to each one of them and begin to carefully roll out the enchiladas. Now once they're all rolled out, you're going to stack them if you want to, throw them into a hot oven for a few minutes so they warm back up, and then you're going to top with a little bit more of the sauce or a generous amount of the sauce. Finish it up with a nice handful of Queso Fresco and a pinch of Blvd pepper. And there you guys have it, bourbon and guajillo braised oxtail enchiladas, ready for a very hungry belly. All right, so these bourbon braised oxtails with guajillo, they look amazing. They smell amazing. Very savory feel to these, obviously with the braised meat, the queso fresco on top, and the homemade corn tortillas. Just kind of put this over the top. This is gonna be a really cool dish. You know, like I said, it's very homemade from scratch, which I love doing. And the sauce is ridiculous. So I'm gonna taste it, tell you guys how I did, and run through the flavors. Oh my gosh, this might be too hot. Oh my gosh. Right away, you kind of get that buttery oxtail. Very rich, slightly sweet. These are killer.
And also with that finishing of the Espelette pepper, it adds kind of a nice little spice to it, just a little bit of warmth to the dish. And I love spicy stuff, so it's always a good thing. And the cheese adds a little bit of saltiness, a little bit more of that creaminess, but it adds a nice salinity to the dish. I think the only thing I would do different with this is I'd probably add some sort of tomato product like blistered tomatoes or charred tomatoes to the sauce itself or to the braising liquid before I puree it, because it adds a nice little acidity. But it's just killer, you know, really wonderful flavors, a little spice, a little bit of you know, richness from the oxtail. So good. Very, very good. This was a fantastic recipe. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you give this video a big old like. Subscribe to my channel if you guys like what I'm doing here. And I'll see you guys next time with another recipe. Later, folks.